If you've been watching the stock market recently, you might have noticed that we've had the worst week in the stock market since the spring of 2020. In other words, we haven't seen a drop like this in the stock market in over 5 years. The S&P 500 from its high back in February is now down 17%, well into correction territory. The tech-heavy Nasdaq is now down over 21%, and the more popular stocks like Nvidia, for example, is down 36% this year. And of course, we can't forget Elon Musk's Tesla has taken an even heavier beating, being down 50% from its all-time high. And as for my own portfolio, well, I don't really want to talk about it. So the S&P 500 lost $5 trillion in value within just 2 days, as investors are panic selling and moving their capital into things like cash and bonds. So I think it's safe to say that we are in a very serious market correction that could pretty easily land us in a multiple months long bear market. Most of the time, it's just smarter to do exactly what Warren Buffett does, because he literally sold billions of dollars worth of stock a few months ago, which was made public. So he's currently sitting on over $300 billion in cash. And compared to the other top 10 billionaires, he's the only one with a positive year-to-date increase in his net worth. His market timing really just couldn't be any better. And this was one of his ways of reminding us that he's simply the greatest investor of all time. Now, one of the reasons why stocks are getting absolutely rocked right now started on April 2nd when President Donald Trump announced Liberation Day, unveiling tons of different tariffs that will be slapped on other countries. And it's very obvious that stocks in the short term really don't like this. So now the big question is, what do we do now? Now, as someone who has been investing in the stock market for about 8 years now, I will say that I've never really seen anything like this before, but there have been many similar market corrections, and of course, tons of fear just being fueled into each one from the media. The very first market correction I experienced was back in late 2018. There was a big tech correction that happened, and because I was very overly leveraged at that point, I lost about 70% of my portfolio. Then after that, the market rallied for another year or so. Then came the quick COVID crash that happened at the beginning of 2020, and I basically got wiped out all over again. But the point is, I've been through multiple corrections and bear markets, and was not only able to survive each one, but come out on top after everything blows over and the market rallies again. Now, oftentimes we hear that it's really important to buy the dip, but some of us might not have anything to buy the dip with. Plus, like we saw in 2022, there may be multiple months where the market doesn't have that V-shaped recovery and kind of goes up and down, but mostly downward for an entire year. And since none of us, with the exception of maybe Warren Buffett, can predict exactly what the stock market is going to do, I always just make sure to be extremely patient and consistent, especially in times like this where there's tons of fear and volatility in the markets. Right now, the fear and greed index gauge is almost at 0. But as for me, I'm going to remain completely unfazed and continue to put money into my portfolio every month. So I get paid 3 times a month, twice from my job, every 2 weeks, and then once a month from YouTube, which, by the way, isn't very much money. It's only about $300 a month. But I always make sure to put at least $500 a month or more into my investment account so that when the market does eventually recover, whether it takes 2 months or 12 months, I'll know that my portfolio will be worth 30, 40, 50% more than it is today. And as long as I've been investing, like I said, sticking with this strategy despite all the noise has always worked out incredibly well. I'm definitely not one to make predictions on what's going to happen in the future, but typically what happens when the markets are just absolutely rocked with bad news and the selling intensifies, rates will often get cut. And then once rates are cut, borrowing becomes a little cheaper, growth starts up again, and all those growth stocks eventually pull us out of the bear market. So hopefully something like that happens this year, and we can start to see some green days again and get back to that healthy long-term growth. But let me know what you guys think of this pretty intense market crash we've had recently, and I will see you all next time.